again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features so that you can get the most out of your choices. So, today, if you've been following the channel, you know the last video I made was part 1 of Clerics in the Player's Handbook. So naturally, today is going to be a rehashing of Monks. Just kidding. We're doing part 2 of Clerics, which is basically going to cover the rest of the Player's Handbook divine domains for the Cleric. I've mentioned quite a few times, the reason I left Cleric and Wizard to last is because they have so many subclasses. Cleric has 7, we got through 2 last time. And that's just in the Player's Handbook. They have almost as many outside the Player's Handbook, with Xanathar's Guide and Sword Coasted Adventurer's Guide. It's just nuts. So, this is going to just cover the rest of the stuff in the Player's Handbook. And if you guys are still interested in other cleric-y type stuff, we can cover the rest of it a little later. But after this, I'm going to cover the other really big class, which is going to be the Wizard. And again, that will be broken up into multiple parts. So, let's really quick review what makes the Cleric unique. I've said this many times before. The design philosophy of 5th edition is based on the idea that each class should feel unique, should play differently right from first level. And the things that really define the class should appear somewhere in the first 2 levels. So by the time you are level 3, you already have... technically, by the time you're level 2, you already have all of the things that are going to make your class feel special and unique. With the Cleric specifically, the 2 things that will be talked about are the spellcasting. Clerics have a somewhat unique type of spellcasting where every morning they have access to their entire spell list, and they just get to prepare spells for a limited number of spells from that spell list. So that makes them very customizable to any situation. And clerics have channeled Divinity, which is a feature that is shared with paladins. The difference being clerics can actually use it more than once as they level up, whereas paladins from level I think they get it to 2 from level 2 all the way up to 20. It's a one and done type thing. So, with that being said, the domains are unique in the idea that clerics choose their domain right at level 1, whereas most other classes choose their subclass at level 3. So that's another thing that makes running a cleric unique in general is... right from first level, you're going to be able to differentiate yourself from other clerics in the party if you do have multiple clerics, which, as we go through these other domains, it's actually really easy to have multiple clerics in a party. Critical Role is doing it right now with both Talison's character and Jester being clerics, and they're both so incredibly different in their abilities that it doesn't. Neither one of them feels like, oh, I'm just the second, the second cleric. So let's jump right into the next domain. Again, yesterday we did the knowledge domain and the life domain. We had to do the life domain because that is the quintessential cleric. And both of them were really interesting and had different things that they did. Now we're going to move on to the first really kind of aggressive cleric domain, which is the light domain. Now, that may sound slightly weird when you think about it. It's like, wow, really? The clerics that follow the god of light? You know, sunlight, that thing that, you know, makes plants grow, keeps us from freezing to death. That's aggressive. Yes, it is. And you'll see as you look at the abilities that it has, that this can be a very offensive based cleric. So first things first, again, every domain has their own set of domain spells. I'm not going to go into every single spell on these, but I do want to point out some ones that support my idea that this is a very aggressive cleric. First, the first level domain spells they get are Burning Hands and Fairy Fire. And I'm a huge fan of Fairy Fire. I think it's super underutilized, but it's a concentration spell that gives everybody advantage on attacks against multiple creatures. It hits a 10 foot by 10 foot square. So it gives you advantage on attack rolls against multiple creatures. And it prevents them from hiding, from turning invisible. Like, it's just a massively useful spell, but it is a very kind of aggressive kind of spell because it's going to help your entire team just do more damage. And Burning Hands, it's fire. That's kind of a theme here, is that the light domain does a lot of radiance and fire damage. At third level, you get things like Flaming Sphere and Scorching Ray. Fifth level, you get Fireball. Seventh level, you get Wall of Fire, which sounds defensive. It's not. Most people I see use Wall of Fire. Just plant the wall on top of a couple enemies and then watch them just burn for a few turns as they try to figure out how to deal with this massive engulfing flame wall. And then the ninth level ones you get, or the ones you get at the ninth level, are Flame Strike and Scrying. Scrying doesn't matter, but Flame Strike does. Which Flame Strike is already a cleric spell, but having it being a light domain spell means they don't have to prepare it. And Flame Strike just does crap tons of both radiant and fire damage. So as you can see, this cleric is set up a lot more like a wizard as far as spell choice goes, and they can really be a powerful kind of nuking style cleric. The other things you get at first level, you get a bonus cantrip, you get the little light cantrip, which is always useful. You're in every single D&D game, you're going to be put in situations where there is no little light source, and somebody in the party is not going to have dark vision. So a light cantrip is always useful. The second thing, and kind of a really interesting defining feature of the light cleric, is what's called warding flare. Basically, if when you're attacked by a creature within 30 feet, so this isn't even a melee thing, which kind of, again, leans into the idea that this is a heavy caster style cleric. Creature in 30 feet of you that you can see attacks you, you can use your reaction to impose the disadvantage on the attack roll, causing light to flare before the attacker, before it hits or misses. And you can use this feature number time equal to your wisdom modifier. You get all uses back when you finish a little long rest. So I've talked quite a few times about the action economy, which is basically whichever side of a fight has more actions they can do has the advantage in 5th edition. And one thing I tend to not talk about, simply because it's not used very much by a lot of classes and most monsters, is the reaction. Every character in combat, for every round, they have an action, they have a bonus action, and they have a reaction. And the vast majority of reactions in the D&D are used for opportunity attacks. Spellcasters will sometimes use their reaction for counter spells, but that's really it. And there's just it's not nearly as reliable as an action or a bonus action, because you will go entire combats without you using your reaction once. So anything that can give you a regular use of your reaction can massively tip the scale of the fight in your favor, because they're giving you an additional thing you can do every round. And the more ability you have to use it, the greater the advantage to your side. So Warding Flare is interesting because it works on anyone that attacks you within the 30 feet. Which there are other abilities similar to this where you can invoke the disadvantage. It generally has to be a melee attack. And again, with this build, you're not going to want to get into melee. You're a caster. You want to stay back. One thing I should mention, any creature that's immune to the blinded condition is immune to this as well, because you're basically just shooting a firework in their face to make them miss. But again, because there's so many instances where this could be used, this can be something that tips the scale in your favor, because not only does it give you something to use your reaction on other than an opportunity attack, it can take away an action from an enemy by forcing them to miss. So really useful. Second level, they get their channel divinity for this domain, which is Radiance of the Dawn. Basically, as an action, you present your holy symbol. Any magical darkness within the 30 feet of you is dispelled, which a lot of people did downplay that part because they only think of like the darkness spell. There's actually quite a few different spells that cause darkness. This dispels all of it without a roll, without worrying about spell level or anything like that, which can be really, really useful. And additionally, each hostile creature within 30 feet must make a con save, and a creature takes radiant damage equal to 2d10 plus your cleric level on a failed save, and half as much on a successful one, and anyone that has total cover from you is not affected. So, Channel Divinity, again, one of the channel divinities that all clerics have is Turn Undead, which is a relatively aggressive version of the channel divinity. It's attacking creatures, and if they're low enough level, it's disintegrating them. This is just flat out widespread damage in a 30-foot radius sphere, basically. And that's pretty good, especially since it's to 2d10 plus your cleric level. So as you get higher, the damage gets more and more and more, and that's guaranteed damage. It's not, an extra d10 that could still roll a 1. No, this just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, is it the absolute best use of your channel divinity? It depends. If you're going to be dealing with a lot of undead, I would probably hold at least one channel divinity back to turn undead, because it's massively useful. But if you're in a place where there's not a ton of undead, or even better, you're in a place where there are creatures that have a weakness to Radiance damage, which tends to be undead, but there's a few creatures that don't like Radiant damage that aren't undead. This can be a really, really useful way to conserve spell slots for other things you wanted to do, and still do a lot of the damage. This is especially good when you're just hit with a wave of low-level enemies. You can wipe large portions of them out. So again, this is a 30-foot radius, means this is 60-foot in diameter area that only affects the bad guys. You don't have to worry about like Fireball, which will hit your own team. So yeah, kind of useful. So it's a 6th level. You get improved flare, which basically means you can use your warding flare feature when a creature that you can see within 30 feet of you attacks a creature other than you. So again, going back to that idea of an action economy, this gives you more abilities or more instances to use warding flare. Again, balancing the fight in your favor. 8th level, again, we've talked about this before. You have 2 kinds of domains for clerics. You have a spellcasting focused domain, and you have a weapon focused domain. And you can tell which one it is by looking at their 8th level ability. This one is potent spellcasting. You add your wisdom modifier to any cleric cantrips you could cast for damage. I mean, so this again is a casting style one. Last one, you get Corona of Light at the 17th level, which you can use your action to activate an aura of sunlight that lasts for 1 minute or until you dismiss it using another action. You emit bright light in a 60-foot radius and dim light in 30 feet beyond this. Your enemies in the bright light have disadvantage on saving throws against any spell that deals fire or radiant damage. Now, one thing you should notice about this is there's no limit on Corona of Light. It doesn't say you can use this so many times and then you need a short or long rest, or you can use this an equal number of times to your wisdom modifier. This is something that you can always use. And when you have things like, again, by the time your level is 17, you have Flame Strike and Fireball and Flaming Sphere. All of those require saving throws. All of those deal for fire damage. Now you're imposing the disadvantage on any creatures basically within 60 feet of you, and it only costs a single action. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this is it doesn't say any spells you cast that deals for fire or radiant damage. It simply says any spells that deal fire or radiant damage. So that means combine Corona of Light with a wizard or a sorcerer that's going ham on fire spells, or in one of my party cases, a bard warlock that exclusively uses fire spells and considers fire the answer to everything. This can be massive. There are a ton of spells that do fire damage and radiant damage, and not just for clerics, for literally every spellcasting class. So massively useful. And if you combine this with the things like the Paladin's smites, because a lot of them will do either a fire or radiant damage, but they'll have a saving throw included with the smite that does extra stuff. So with Corona of Light, you can actually make it easier for your Paladin to invoke smite conditions and the things on enemies, because again, it doesn't say that it has to be the damage that there's just a saving throw. It's just any spell that causes the damage that has a saving throw. So again, really cool idea for a cleric. The next cleric we're going to do excuse me, is the nature domain. Now, nature domain clerics are kind of like, just the idea of it kind of seems to almost conflict with druids. I did druids on this show. years ago now, which seems crazy because it doesn't seem like I've been doing this show for years. But I have, and it's weird. Druids are kind of nature clerics, like they're nature based clerics, where they generally tend to worship a deity. They get their spells from nature as opposed to a deity, but they prepare spells in this is the same way that clerics do, where they have this access to all their spell list and they prepare spells from it every morning. So you would think that the nature domain would really kind of conflict, and it doesn't, because the nature domain cleric, well, yeah, it does have a lot of spells that it kind of shares with druids. The nature domain cleric is much more interested in beasts than it is all of nature, and it makes it a really interesting class, especially when we did to deal with the action economy based on that. So the first thing you get, Acolyte of Nature. You get to learn one druid cantrip of your choice, which is super useful, especially since they use the same casting ability. They're both wisdom, so you don't have to worry about not being able to do it. And there's some cool druid cantrips out there. I personally am a big fan of Thorn Whip. Just because, again, it's cool to envision yourself with just a whip of thorns and it allows you to move targets. And I'm a big fan of control. You also gain proficiency in one of the following skills of your choice, which are animal handling, nature, or survival. Animal handling and survival are both wisdom based. Nature is intelligence based. And as you can see, this is already starting to shift into that idea of, animals are people too, people that you can control. You also, right at first level, you get proficiency with heavy armor, which means this is a cleric that's designed to take a hit. I'm going to go ahead and do some spoilers now. This has Divine Strike at 8th level, so this is a more weapon-focused cleric path. For their channel Divinity, you get Charm Animals and plants. As an action, you present your holy symbol and invoke the name of your deity. Each beast or plant creature that you can see within 30 feet of you must make a wisdom saving throw. If the creature fails its saving throw, it's charmed by you for a minute or until it takes damage. And while it's charmed by you, it is friendly to you and other creatures you designate. This is just super useful. Beasts in the monster manual are many. There are tons of them. Plant-based creatures are a little bit more limited, but there's some really wicked ones in there as well. And at the second level, this is 100% a control style ability. You get a, excuse me, you get a pack of wolves that attacks you. You can use this because not all of them are going to fail. You can use this to, again, control the action economy and basically get, maybe half of them to just not attack you. They'll be friendly with you. Doesn't mean you can get them to attack the other wolves, but it takes a large chunk of the enemies out. And then because it lasts for a minute, either you guys can run away once all the aggressive ones are killed. You can either run away before the other ones regain their senses, or you can just have the team focus fire each one down one at a time, and the other beasts won't come to its defense because it's friendly with you and your friends. So even at level 2, this is a really useful ability. It gets better as you get a higher level than this, but right from the get-go, it's already useful. 6th level, you get what's called Dampen Elements, which is when you or a creature within 30 feet of you take acid, cold, fire, lightning, or the thunder damage. You can use your reaction to grant resistance to the creature against the instance of that damage. Now, two things. One, again, this is giving you an ability to use your reaction, which is always good. Two, it's having the damage against party members, which is always useful. And three, there's no limit to this. So even like the warding light from the light domain, that you can only use up to 5 times between the long rest, because you could have a maximum of +5 wisdom modifier under normal conditions. This, every single turn, you can dampen elements. Now, it's limited in the fact that it has to be one of those 5 damage types, but those are extremely common damage type. Any spellcaster you're going to be fighting will probably use one of those damage types. A lot of magic weapons use those damage types. There will be plenty of opportunities for you to use that and give your team that extra edge. 8th level, we've already talked about, is Divine Strike. This is a little interesting because you deal 1d8 either cold, fire, or lightning damage to the target, and you get to choose what kind of damage it is. So that is really, really useful for a cleric to be able to wade in and go, I'm going to hit you with fire. Oh, you resistant fire. I'm going to hit you with cold. All those different things really, really help in making it so you can always use this ability. And then the final thing, which really makes this a fantastic class. At 17th level, you get Master of Nature. You gain the ability to command animals and plant creatures. While creatures are charmed by your charm animals and plants feature, you can take a bonus action on your turn to verbally command what each of those creatures will do on its next turn. You are now the mother of dragons, if dragons were beasts or made of plants. You are the mother of plant dragons. This synergizes really, really well with the fact that you get heavy armor and you're a weapon-based cleric. Because now you can wade into combat. You can channel divinity and charm animals and plants to fight with you. And use your bonus action, which you don't really have a ton of other uses for other than healing, to have these creatures that attack with you, which again, action economy, you have just added a bunch of actions to your side of the field and away from their side. This is a super useful thing. Now, it can be very limited if you're not fighting beasts or plants, but if you do a little planning, this effectively means that you can travel with, if you want to get really creative, you can travel with hostile creatures in tow, like maybe a bear in a cage or something with the party that's not under your control or anything, and at the beginning of combat you just channeled the divinity and you've just expanded your army. So to take a little planning, a little creativity, but there are so many instances where this Master of Nature can be massively useful. And then when you look at a few of the domain spells, things like Dominate Beast is massively useful. Insect Plague, even when you don't have beasts around you that you can command, you have other spells that can more than make up for it. So, yeah. Next up is the Tempest Domain, which is, The gods they mention here are Talos, Umberly, Cord, who are all really kind of they're all kind of evil gods. Uh, One of the things they mention here, the Devourer, and then they go Zeus and the Thor, because they fit in there. Anyone that uses little lightning or the thunderstorms and stuff like that, they are covered in the Tempest Domain. Tempest Domain is another very aggressive style domain. It is a weapon focused one, so you'll get Divine Strike in this. And right at for first level, you get proficiency with martial weapons and heavy armor. So you are kind of built to go wade in and attack with this character. Right at for first level, you also get Wrath of the Storm, which is when a creature within 5 feet of you that you can see hits you with an attack, you can use your reaction to cause the creature to make a dex save. The creature takes 2d8 lightning or the thunder damage, your choice, on a failed saving throw, and half as much on a successful one. And you can use this an equal number of times to your wisdom modifier, get them all back after a long rest. So again, this gives you a use for your reaction. It's built around the idea that you need to be up close and personal with the bad guys. And this translates directly to damage. Now, as we go forward, we will find out more uses for just damage in general with this class. But this can be really, really effective way to just wade in and start slaying good creatures left and right. Second level, you get your Channel Divinity, which is Destructive Wrath. When you roll a lightning or the thunder damage, you can use your Channel Divinity to deal maximum damage instead of rolling. Massively useful, especially if you're using high level things like one of the Tempest Domain spells that you get at 9th level is Destructive Wave, which does 5d6 the thunder damage and 5d6 radiant damage. If you channel Divinity, that means the thunder damage is 30 damage automatically, and then you get another 5d6 on the top of it. So when you're looking at really, really powerful spells that do the thunder or lightning damage, this can be amazing. You can also use it if you really need it on your Wrath of the Storm feature. Because again, this is any time you are rolling lightning or the thunder damage. It doesn't have to be a spell effect. If you've got a magic weapon that does lightning or the thunder damage, you can still use this. It doesn't limit it. It's anytime your character rolls lightning or the thunder damage. So again, this class is built on just doing lots of damage really, really quick. Lots of guaranteed damage. At 6th level, you get what's called the Thunderbolts strike. When you do when you deal lightning damage to a large or smaller creature, you can also push it up to 10 feet away from you. So this starts putting it into the control field, which, again, when combining that with other spells and abilities, means you can do a lot. Wrath of the Storm can do lightning damage. So someone could hit you once. You could Wrath of the Storm, then knock them back to 10 feet. And then the nice thing about this is it's not they need to make a save or you can do this. It's anytime you hit them with lightning damage. So even with Wrath of the Storm, they take half as much damage on a successful save. they still take the damage. You can still the Thunderbolts to strike them, and there's no limit to the Thunderbolts to strike. So every time you use lightning damage, you can move people around, and it's not even limited to a single creature return. If you use a if you use an area spell or something, the only limitation to the Thunderbolt strike is it has to be 10 feet away from you. So you can't move them closer or move them laterally. It's always pushing them away. But if you maneuver your character correctly, you can be very, very effective at corralling and controlling, using things like cliffs and pits to your advantage. Very, very, very useful. Again, 8th level, you get the Divine Strike. You do the thunder damage with your Divine Strike, which the only thing that slightly ups this setting to me with this is they didn't give you the option for lightning damage, because that would synergize super well with the Thunderbolt Strike. But it might just be that was a balancing thing to not overpower the class. Because if you can just use your regular melee attacks to push people around, that's really, really powerful. But it's still extra damage, still useful. So, and then 17th level, this is the coolest part. It's called Stormborn. It's the 17th level. You have a flying speed equal to your current walking speed whenever you are not underground or indoors. You're now a flying cleric. Remember how I said, well, yeah, there's a lot of different ways as long as you can maneuver yourself. Well, now you can fly. Thunderbolt Strike is now just your kind of catch-all of, oh, we need to move someone? Give me a second. Call Lightning, Destructive Wave, whatever you wanted to do. And now you can do it from the air. Now, the only thing that kind of dampens this is, again, this is a weapon-based, melee-based Cleric Domain. So you are kind of intended to be up close and personal with the bad guys. However, the ability to fly over bad guys to get to the more vulnerable bad guys. The ability to fly away when you're in a bad situation. All of these are massively useful. So yeah, really, really cool, very aggressive style cleric. Trickery Domain. Laura Bailey has made the Trickery Domain famous because Jester, the cleric she plays in the second campaign for Critical Role, is a Trickery Domain cleric, and she plays her really, really well. But a lot of people don't really know all of the abilities that a Trickster Cleric actually gets, simply because Laura hasn't used all of them. Funny enough, she has certain things that she focuses on, because that's her character, and you're always going to find that unless you are really heavily into kind of like tactical play and optimized play, there are always going to be abilities you don't use. So this, I hope, people will find this at least interesting and enough just see all of the things she has at her disposal. Trickery Domain spells are kind of what you would suspect. There are a couple kind of useful ones. Blink is one of my favorite spells to use actually on my Blade Singer, which is a kind of wizard. Simply because anytime you roll an 11 or higher on a d20 while this spell is going, you blink out. And you're effectively immune to everything, because you're not on the prime material plane. You are on the ethereal plane, which is kind of a parallel plane to the prime material. It sits right on to top of it. And when you're in the ethereal plane, you can see the prime material. Everything just looks real hazy. but it means you can't take damage, you can't be targeted by spells, anything like that. Like, it's massively, massively useful. And then you return to an unoccupied space of your choice that you can see within 10 feet of the space you've vanished from. So you kind of blink into existence, do whatever you want, and then the end of your turn, you have the chance of blinking back out. It is a concentration spell, so that, limits its abilities a little bit, but I can't tell you how much fun I have had blinking in and out of combat to do massive damage and then just disappear for a while. It's super, super fun. The other ability you get right at first level is what's called Blessing of the Trickster. Laura uses this a lot. You touch a willing creature other than you, and you give it advantage on dexterity stealth checks, and the blessing lasts for an hour or until you use this feature again. So, a couple things you should notice. Blessing of the Trickster has no limitation. You can just keep using it. You can just only use it on one person at a time. But that can be massively useful. Especially if you're in a situation where you have to cross a room or something. You literally can just have your cleric sit there and touch each person as they go, and once that person's to the other side, you touch then the next one, and everyone gets advantage on their dex stealth checks. So again, Lore's used it a ton. It's really, really useful. There are tons of times when you're going to have stealth checks. Like, stealth checks are just a part of the D&D in general. Second level, you get your channel Divinity, which Laura uses a lot. It's called Invoked Duplicity. Now, some things that I didn't realize until I went deep into the class. The ability itself, as an action, you create a perfect illusion of yourself, and that specific thing is really important. The fact that it is a perfect illusion will add to the ability of you to confuse enemies and things like that, especially if you start walking through the duplicates space, or having it walk through yours, to make it incredibly difficult for the enemies to figure out which one is the real one. It lasts for a minute or two until you lose your concentration, as if you were concentrating on a spell. That's something that I don't think I've seen them utilize in the show. They might have. I haven't been paying that close attention when she used this, because I didn't realize that was the thing. Invoked Duplicity is a concentration spell, effectively. It doesn't use a spell slot or anything like that. And it can't be counterspelled, because it's not technically a spell, but it is a concentration of effect. So anything else that you could cast, like Spirit Guardians, I think is a spell. Any concentration spell will make Invoked Duplicity fizzle out, which is a big deal. It basically means while you have Invoked Duplicity on, you have to limit yourself to non-concentration spells, which eliminates a significantly large portion of the spellbook in general in 5th edition. Concentration spells are extremely common, and they're specifically designed to limit their effectiveness, so spellcasters aren't the crazy overpowered creatures at high level that they have been in earlier editions. We want them to kind of be in line with all the other classes. You don't just feel useless at high levels if you're playing a fighter and you have a wizard on your team. So the illusion appears in an unoccupied space you can see within 30 feet of you. As a bonus action on your turn, you can move the illusion up to 30 feet to a space you can see, but it must remain within 120 feet of you. And for the duration, you can cast spells as though you were in the illusion space, but you must use your own senses. Additionally, when both you and your illusion are within 5 feet of a creature that can see the illusion, you have advantage on attack rolls against that creature, given how distracting the illusion is to the target. There's a lot to unpack there. First of all, from a confusion standpoint, which is what the Trickster Domain is really built on, what this means is if an enemy is trying to figure out which one of you is real, because if they cast spells at the illusion, it's just not going to do anything. There's nothing in here that says the illusion has an AC or takes damage. No, it just exists until you lose concentration. So the more things you can do to make it look like your illusion is the real one, the safer the cleric is. So you can cast spells from the illusion. So it looks like the illusion is casting spells, making the enemies think that's what it is. You can move the illusion while you're moving. It will have a similar movement speed, since both of you will probably have a 30-foot movement speed. So it will look, act, and even have the abilities, theoretically, or at least as far as you can see, of the view. And then if you both get right next to them, you get advantage on your attack rolls, which is really useful. It does mean that this is a melee-focused class, so it does get the divine, or domain, I mean. It does get the divine strike at 8th level. We'll deal with the divine strike in a little bit, because it is a unique divine strike. But let's go to the next thing. At 6th level, you get a third channel divinity option. This is something that's unique to the Trickster Domain. I think maybe one or two others, where instead of only having 2 channel divinity options, you have 3. This channel divinity is called Cloak of Shadows. As an action, you become invisible until the end of your next turn. You become visible if you attack or cast a spell. Compared to Turn Undead and Invoked Duplicity, Cloak of Shadows, I feel, is a significantly more limited use option. It only lasts for effectively to 12 seconds, so there's not a lot you can do. You can attack or cast a spell while you're invisible, so that limits that as well. And you have to use one of your channel divinities to do it. So, personally, I can see where there are situations where it can be incredibly useful. You know, the cleric's in a bad position and needs to get out of the way. This is one of the few weapon-based clerics that don't get heavy armor proficiency, so they're easier to hit. So I can see where it could have uses, but it's mostly a kind of Hail Mary kind of thing compared to Invoked Duplicity. I think just has a lot more uses. And then, obviously, to turn undead is very useful. The Divine Strike at 8th level. The interesting thing about this is instead of doing elemental damage, you actually do poison damage to the target. You do an extra d8 of poison damage once on each of your turns when you hit with a weapon attack. This is interesting, but poison is one of the damage types that early on in the game in tier 2, you start finding creatures that either have resistance or immunity to it. So, to me, poison damage isn't nearly as useful as some of the other damage types. However, it totally fits into the idea of the Trickery Domain. The fact that you can just add poison to your attacks just really kind of fits to that. It's also something that I can't remember lore using a ton, but again, I may just be missing it. But is very unique. I think it's the only Cleric domain that even gives you access to poison damage. Clerics just generally don't do a ton of poison. And then 17th level is your improved duplicity, which is just super cool. At the 17th level, you can create up to 4 duplicates of yourself instead of 1 when you invoke duplicity. And as a bonus action on your turn, you can move any number of them up to 30 feet to a maximum range of 120 feet. Guys, with this, you get 4 duplicates and you. How cool is that? You make 5 of yourself, and they can all run around. You instantly become the most confusing person on the battlefield. It effectively looks like you've just doubled your party size. You can cast spells from any one of their positions, which actually means with just regular Invoked Duplicity, if you wanted to, you could hide the cleric behind a wall or something and just have them peek around to be able to see, to be able to cast spells, because they need a little line of sight and stuff. However, with 5 of them, you could combine this, like literally, what you could do just to come up with a really interesting combo. You could Cloak of Shadows onto turn 1, because it's an action. Disappear and just find somewhere to be innocuous. Then, on your next turn, since Invoked Duplicity isn't a spell and isn't an attack, you can invoke Duplicity, and 4 of you just appear out of nowhere and start running around. Your invisibility would end, but if you're hidden behind a wall or, in underbrush or something, you can just chill from the back, cast spells from your duplicates locations, and the enemy can never hurt you. And then just to mess them up, have them run through each other's spaces so they can never tell which ones they've actually hit already. And just have an absolute blast. Just being this sneaky, just nuts character. So yeah, I think the Trickery Domain has some cool stuff it can do, especially once you get to the 9th level domain spells, which are Dominate Person, which is massively useful. Basically, any humanoid, you get to take them onto to your side. And then modify memory is crazy powerful. So yeah, but both of those super cool. Trickster Domain, very interesting. I love seeing Laura play it, so I'm interested to see where she goes. Finally, yes, this has been a very long video, but it's friggin' Clerics. We get to the War Domain. War Domain is exactly what it sounds like. They do damage. They do lots of damage. You can probably guess this is going to be a weapon focused domain. You get the Divine Strike at 8th level. Yeah, right at the first level, you get proficiency with martial weapons and heavy armor, and you get the feature War Priest. When you use the attack action, you can make 1 weapon attack as a bonus action. And you can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier. You get all of them back when you finish a long rest. War Priests are built on weapon attacks specifically. They can do extra weapon attacks. It does mean they benefit the most from using things like mauls and great axes and great swords, simply because they do the most damage with a single hit, and with your War Priest ability, you can get an extra attack with your bonus action to just do even more damage. Magic weapons and the things like that, benefit them with things like Flame Tongue weapons or for Frostbrand weapons, where they just get extra damage per hit. Anything that gives them extra damage per hit makes them that much more powerful. And when you do things like one of the domain spells that they get is Crusader's Mantle, which basically every creature, every non-hostile creature in an aura that's the 30-foot radius centering on you and moving with you deals an extra 1d4 radiant damage when it hits with a weapon attack. So things like Crusader's Mantle, Holy Weapon, which is a spell you get at much higher, anything that just gives you extra damage is going to be super beneficial as a war domain cleric. Your channel divinity, it's the second level, is called Guided Strike. When you make an attack roll, you can use your channel divinity to get a plus 10 bonus to the roll. You make this choice after you see the roll, but before the DM says whether the attack hits or misses. This can be super useful when you need to make these hits, especially if you're fighting like a caster or something, and you need them to start making concentration checks so you can get rid of some really gnarly spells. This channel divinity is just useful. Now, it also works. It works on anything with an attack roll. So there are a lot of really powerful spells that require attack rolls, and if you need them to hit, things like Guiding Bolts, you need it to hit. So someone else, like if you have a rogue in your party and they just can't get, there's a sneak attack for whatever reason on this creature, Guiding Bolt will give them advantage on a sneak attack, or maybe the rogue themselves has disadvantage for some reason. A lot of people don't realize when you're a rogue, if you have disadvantage, it doesn't matter what else is going on. You simply can't get your sneak attack. So if you really need that Guiding Bolt to hit, Guided Strike will do that for you. And then other things like Inflict Wounds when cast at high levels is super powerful, and Guided Strike can ensure that it hits when it needs to. 6th level gives you another channel divinity. So again, this is another cleric domain that gets the 3 of them. When a creature within the 30 feet of you makes an attack roll, you can use your reaction to grant that creature a plus 10 bonus to the roll using your channel divinity. You make this choice after you see the roll, but before the DM says whether the attack hits or miss. Blah blah blah. So it's effectively Guided Strike versus someone else. So calling it a different channel divinity is a little weak, but it's still massively useful. You're always going to have those instances where you need this attack to hit. It could be your paladin has, fighting an undead creature, and your paladin has a third level spell slot primed for a smite, and he needs to hit with this smite attack. Give him the War God's Blessing. Your rogue and then needs that sneak attack to do crazy damage. This effectively just means that your party is hitting when it needs to hit. Which again, action economy wise, it means you're not wasting actions on your team by missing attacks. Again, we talked about the 8th level. You get the Divine Strike. The interesting thing about this is it doesn't do any elemental damage whatsoever. You deal an extra 8d8 damage of the same type dealt by the weapon to the target, and like everything else, at 14th level, it increases to 2d8. Now, something to take into account, Divine Strike is still once on each of your turns. So if you could combine it with War Priest, where you get an extra attack as a bonus action, you can't Divine Strike twice, which is somewhat of a little letdown, but there's so many other things you can do as a cleric. It's not that big a deal. And then 17th level, you get what's called Avatar of Battle, which is you gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical weapons. It's remarkably rare for monsters' stat blocks to have magical weapons built into them. So this is effectively the defensive portion of a barbarian rage that's just always active. Which again, because this is a weapon focused melee focused cleric, they're going to be able to rush into combat, get attacked by loads of bad guys, make them waste their actions doing half damage to you instead of whole damage to another character. You have the ability to heal yourself. When you are using a weapon-based or a melee-based cleric, it's incredibly useful to focus on bonus actions to spells. So healing with Healing Word or Mass Healing Word. Using spiritual weapon is a fantastic way to just get extra damage whenever you're fighting, especially if you cast it at higher levels, because at level, I believe 3 and 4, it actually does, I think it's 2d8 force damage, and it gets more and more powerful as you cast it at higher levels, and every bonus action you can hit with this spiritual weapon. It's also not a concentration spell, so you don't have to worry about it blinking out if you get hit, and you can combine it with things like Spirit Guardians to just do even more damage and really be an aggressive melee cleric. So that is the PHB cleric. As always, if you enjoyed this, you want to see more, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps the video to get out. The liking helps with the all-oppressive god of YouTube we call the algorithm. So please like the video, share it with other people that you think would like to see the different side of clerics that most people think about. In the comments below, what's your opinion of clerics now? Again, going into this, I know a lot of people think of clerics as just, oh, I heal you, I heal you, I stand in the back and please don't hit me. And now that you've seen all of these really unique clerics, and the fun thing about this isn't even all, or these aren't even the most unique clerics out there. Like I said, when you get to Sword Coast Adventure's Guide to a point, but Xanathar's Guide throws curveballs at every single class, and they get even more creative and more interesting. But even just these PHB ones, what's your opinion of the cleric now? Do you have kind of an idea of a cleric you would like to play, or like to see someone else play now? Put those in the comments below. Commenting helps us please the YouTube god algorithm. Also in the comments below, since all I have left is the wizard, what do you guys want to see me doing after this? Do you want to see me doing more stuff like some of this is subclasses from like the Magic the Gathering books, or some of this is stuff from Matt Mercer's the two Exandria books that have come out? You know, what's the next stuff you guys want to see after I deal with the evil that is wizards? Again, in the comments below. Otherwise, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time, all right? Bye-bye.